The bitter Colorado wind howled like a wounded animal as 18-year-old Sophia Bennett pounded desperately on the heavy wooden door of the only home she had ever known. Her knuckles were raw and bleeding, her tears freezing on her cheeks in the merciless February night of 1883. "Please, Agnes." "Let me in," she cried, her voice breaking with each word. "The blizzard is getting worse." Only silence answered her pleas, interrupted by the occasional cruel laugh from inside. Sophia's stepmother, Agnes Bennett, had finally done what she'd been threatening since Sophia's father died 6 months ago, locked her out to perish in one of Cripple Creek's deadliest winter storms. "You'll not take what's rightfully mine," Agnes shouted through the door. "Your father was a fool to leave half the ranch to you. By morning, it'll all be mine." Sophia slumped against the door, her strength waning as the temperature dropped further. The thin shawl wrapped around her shoulders did nothing to shield her from the biting cold. Snow had already accumulated several inches deep, and the howling wind made it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Her fingers and toes had gone numb, and a dangerous drowsiness was beginning to overtake her. "I need to find help," she whispered to herself, pushing away from the door with the last of her strength. The nearest neighbor was 3 miles away, an impossible journey in this weather. The small barn at the edge of their property was her only hope for shelter, but even that seemed miles away as she stumbled through the deepening snow. Halfway to the barn, Sophia's legs gave out beneath her. She collapsed into the snow, her body shivering violently as the cold seeped through her thin dress. As consciousness began to slip away, she thought she heard the distant sound of hoofbeats. "Must be imagining things," she murmured, her eyes fluttering closed. Vincent Evans had been riding for hours, pushing his stallion through the worsening blizzard. At 26, he'd seen his share of harsh Colorado winters, but this storm was particularly vicious. He should have stayed in town, but his cabin was only 5 miles north of Cripple Creek, and he'd been confident he could make it before the worst hit. He'd been wrong. Now, with visibility reduced to almost nothing and the temperature dropping by the minute, Vincent knew he needed to find shelter or risk freezing to death. His horse, Thunder, snorted and tossed his head, clearly distressed by the harsh conditions. "Easy, boy," Vincent soothed, patting the animal's neck. "We'll find somewhere to wait this out." Through a momentary break in the swirling snow, Vincent spotted a faint light in the distance, a house, perhaps. He steered Thunder toward it, hope rising in his chest. As they drew closer, Vincent could make out the outline of a modest farmhouse. But something on the ground caught his attention, a dark shape in the snow that didn't belong. He guided Thunder closer and dismounted, his boots crunching in the fresh powder. "Dear God," he breathed, dropping to his knees beside the prone figure. It was a young woman, her skin alarmingly pale, her lips tinged blue from the cold. Vincent quickly removed his heavy coat and wrapped it around her, then checked for a pulse. It was there, but weak and thready. "Miss, can you hear me?" He gently patted her cheek, relieved when she stirred slightly. Sophia's eyes fluttered open, confusion clouding her gaze. "Who?" "Name's Vincent Evans. I'm going to help you, miss. What happened? Why are you out in this storm, stepmother?" "Locked me out," she managed, her voice barely audible above the howling wind. "Said I'd be dead by morning." Anger surged through Vincent, hot and fierce. "Not if I have anything to say about it," he growled. "Can you stand?" When she shook her head weakly, Vincent carefully gathered her into his arms, noting how light she felt. "What's your name?" he asked as he carried her toward the house. "Sophia Bennett," she whispered, her head lolling against his shoulder. Vincent approached the door and pounded on it with his fist. "Hello inside. Open up." There was movement behind the curtains, but the door remained closed. A woman's harsh voice called out, "Go away, we don't want any trouble." "You've already got trouble, madam," Vincent shouted back, his temper flaring. "I've got a half-frozen girl out here who says you locked her out to die. Now open this door before I break it down. She's lying. She ran away, now leave us be." The voice was shrill with panic now. Vincent had heard enough. He set Sophia carefully against the wall next to the door, ensuring she was propped up and still wrapped in his coat. "Hold on," he told her, then turned his attention to the door. He examined the heavy lock, then reached for the knife at his belt. With practiced precision, he worked the blade between the door and frame, manipulating the simple lock mechanism. After a few tense moments, there was a satisfying click. Vincent grinned grimly and turned the handle, pushing the door open with force. A middle-aged woman stood there, a rifle clutched in her trembling hands. "This is my property. You have no right. Put that gun down before someone gets hurt," Vincent interrupted, his voice deadly quiet. "And it won't be me." Something in his eyes must have convinced Agnes Bennett that he meant business. She lowered the rifle slightly, her face contorted with fear and anger. Vincent turned away from her, returning to Sophia. He lifted her once more and carried her into the house, kicking the door closed behind them. "She needs warmth, and quickly," he said, ignoring Agnes's protests. "Where's her room?" "Upstairs, first door on the left," a young voice piped up. Vincent looked down to see a boy of about 12 standing in the hallway, his eyes wide with concern. "Thank you, son," Vincent said, already moving toward the stairs. "That's my stepson, Thomas," Agnes hissed, "and he should keep his mouth shut about things that don't concern him." Vincent carried Sophia up the narrow staircase, following the boy's directions to her room. It was small but neat, with a simple iron bed, a dresser, and a small desk by the window. He gently laid Sophia on the bed and began to assess her condition more thoroughly. Her skin was ice cold, her fingertips and the tips of her ears showing early signs of frostbite. She had stopped shivering, a dangerous sign that her body was giving up the fight against the cold. "Thomas," Vincent called, and the boy appeared in the doorway. "I need as many blankets as you can find and hot water if you have any ready." The boy nodded and disappeared. Vincent turned his attention back to Sophia, whose eyes had drifted closed again. "Stay with me, Miss Bennett," he urged, rubbing her hands between his to generate some warmth. "You're safe now, but I need you to stay awake." Sophia's eyelids fluttered. "So cold," she whispered. "I know, but you're going to be fine," Vincent assured her, though worry gnawed at him. He'd seen men in the mountains die from less exposure than she'd endured. Thomas returned with an armful of blankets and was followed by a reluctant Agnes carrying a steaming kettle. "Here," she said curtly, setting the kettle on the bedside table. "Now get out of my house." Vincent fixed her with a hard stare. "I'm not going anywhere until I'm sure she's recovered. And then, madam, you and I are going to have a serious conversation about attempting murder." Agnes paled. "It wasn't murder. I just locked your stepdaughter out in a blizzard with the stated intention that she'd be dead by morning," Vincent finished for her. "The sheriff might be interested in hearing about that." Agnes backed away, her expression a mixture of fear and hatred. "You have no proof." "I'm a witness," Thomas said quietly from the doorway. "I heard everything, Ma. I'll tell the sheriff what you did." Agnes turned on her son, raising her hand as if to strike him, but Vincent was faster. He caught her wrist in a firm grip. "That's enough," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Go downstairs and stay there. I'll deal with you later." After Agnes had fled the room, Vincent turned to Thomas. "Thank you for your help, son. Can you stay with your stepsister while I take care of my horse? He's still outside and needs shelter from this storm." Thomas nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir." Our barn is just behind the house. Good lad, I'll be back shortly. Vincent placed a gentle hand on Sophia's forehead. I'll return soon, Miss Bennett. You're safe now. Outside, the storm had intensified, the wind cutting through Vincent's clothes like a knife now that he'd left his coat with Sophia. He hurried to where he'd left Thunder, finding the loyal stallion still waiting patiently, covered in a layer of snow. "Come on, boy," Vincent murmured, leading the horse toward the barn. "Let's get you out of this weather." The barn was small but well-maintained with several empty stalls. Vincent chose one, quickly unsaddling Thunder and rubbing him down with handfuls of straw to dry his coat. He found some hay in a nearby bin and made sure the horse had enough to eat before heading back to the house. By the time Vincent returned to Sophia's room, some color had begun to return to her cheeks. Thomas had built up the fire in the small iron stove in the corner, and the room was pleasantly warm. Vincent nodded approvingly at the boy. "You've done well, Thomas. How is she?" "She woke up for a bit," Thomas reported. "Asked for some water, then fell asleep again." Vincent approached the bed, noting with relief that Sophia's breathing seemed more regular now. He placed a hand on her forehead, still cool but not dangerously so. The immediate crisis appeared to have passed. "I'll sit with her now," Vincent told Thomas. "You should get some rest." The boy hesitated. "What about Ma? She's mighty angry." Vincent's jaw tightened. "Don't worry about your mother. I won't let her hurt you or Miss Bennett." After Thomas left, Vincent pulled a chair close to Sophia's bed and settled in for the night. Outside, the blizzard raged on, but inside the small room, there was only the gentle crackling of the fire and the soft sound of Sophia's breathing. Vincent studied her face in the warm glow from the stove. Even pale and drawn from her ordeal, she was beautiful, delicate features framed by rich chestnut hair that had begun to dry in soft waves against the pillow. He wondered about her story, what had led to such hatred from her stepmother that the woman would try to kill her. As if sensing his thoughts, Sophia stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. For a moment, confusion clouded her gaze, then recognition dawned. You saved me," she whispered, her voice still weak but clearer than before. Vincent leaned forward, a gentle smile softening his rugged features. "I'm just glad I came along when I did. How are you feeling?" "Like I've been trampled by a herd of buffalo," she admitted with a faint attempt at humor. "But alive thanks to you. You feel up to telling me what happened. Why would your stepmother do such a thing?" Sophia's expression darkened. "My father died 6 months ago. He owned this ranch, not large, but it's good land with a steady spring that never dries up, even in the worst droughts. He left half to me and half to Agnes, with the provision that I could buy her out when I turned 21 or marry." "And she wasn't happy with that arrangement," Vincent guessed. "No, she's always resented me. My father married her when I was 10 after my mother died. Agnes has been difficult, but tolerable while father was alive. Since his death, though." Sophia shuddered, and Vincent wasn't sure if it was from the memory or lingering effects of the cold. "She's been trying to drive me away," Sophia continued. "But this is my home, the only connection I have left to my parents. I refuse to leave. Tonight, we argued about selling some of the cattle. I wanted to wait until spring when prices would be better, but Agnes wanted the money now. When I stood my ground, she tricked me into going outside to check on a noise, then locked the door behind me." Vincent's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "That's attempted murder, plain and simple." "She would have claimed I ran away in the storm," Sophia said softly. "No one would have questioned it too deeply. Agnes is well respected in town. She puts on a good face for others." "Well, she won't get away with it now," Vincent assured her. "I'm Vincent Evans, by the way. Don't think I properly introduced myself before." "Sophia Bennett," she replied with a small smile. "Though I suppose you already know that. Are you from around here, Mr. Evans? Vincent, please." "And yes, I have a small place north of Cripple Creek. I was on my way home from town when the storm caught me by surprise." "Then I'm doubly grateful. You risked your own safety to help a stranger." Vincent shrugged, slightly embarrassed by her gratitude. Any decent man would have done the same. "Not all men are decent," Sophia said with a wisdom beyond her years. "I've learned that much, at least." They fell into a comfortable silence, broken only by the occasional crack from the stove or howl of the wind outside. Eventually, Sophia's eyelids began to droop again. "You should rest," Vincent told her. "I'll keep watch." "You'll stay?" she asked, her voice already slurring with exhaustion. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised. Satisfied with his answer, Sophia surrendered to sleep once more. Vincent settled back in the chair, prepared for a long night. Downstairs, he could hear Agnes moving about, occasionally talking to herself in angry bursts. He would deal with her in the morning, but for now, his priority was ensuring Sophia's recovery. As the hours passed, Vincent found himself watching Sophia sleep, struck by her courage and resilience. Most women, most men, for that matter, would have broken under the treatment she'd endured. Yet there was a quiet strength about her that commanded respect. Outside, the blizzard gradually subsided, the howling wind decreasing to occasional gusts. Vincent moved to the window, pushing aside the curtain to look out at the transformed landscape. Everything was blanketed in white, pristine and beautiful in the pale moonlight that now broke through the clearing clouds. A soft sound behind him made Vincent turn. Sophia was awake again, watching him with curious eyes. "Has the storm passed?" she asked, her voice stronger now. "Mostly," he replied, returning to her bedside. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Still cold inside somehow, but better." She pushed herself up to a sitting position, wincing slightly. "Easy now," Vincent cautioned. "You've been through a lot." "I need to thank you properly," Sophia insisted. "You saved my life, Mr. Evans. Vincent, I don't know how I can ever repay such a debt." "There's no debt to repay," he assured her. "I'm just glad I was in the right place at the right time." A commotion from downstairs interrupted their conversation, the sound of the front door opening, followed by angry voices. "That'll be Agnes," Sophia said, tension returning to her face. "She always rises early." Vincent moved toward the door. "Stay here. I'll handle this." Downstairs, he found Agnes arguing with a heavy-set man bundled in a sheriff's coat. Thomas stood to one side, his young face determined despite his obvious fear. "Sheriff Miller," Agnes was saying, "this man broke into my home in the middle of the night. I want him arrested immediately." The sheriff, a grizzled man in his 50s with shrewd eyes, looked past Agnes to Vincent. "This the fella then?" "Yes," Agnes declared. "He picked my lock and forced his way in." After she locked her stepdaughter outside in the blizzard, Vincent countered calmly. "The girl was half dead from exposure when I found her." Sheriff Miller's bushy eyebrows rose. "That true, Thomas?" he asked, turning to the boy. Thomas nodded, avoiding his mother's furious glare. "Yes, sir. Ma locked Sophia out and said she'd be dead by morning. Mr. Evans saved her." "You ungrateful little—" Agnes lunged toward Thomas, but Sheriff Miller caught her arm. "That's enough of that, Mrs. Bennett," he said firmly. "Sounds like we've got ourselves a serious situation here." "Sheriff, I can explain," Agnes began, but Miller cut her off. "Save it for the judge, madam. Attempted murder's a hanging offense in these parts." Agnes's face drained of color. "Murder? No, I never. It was just discipline." "The girl's unruly, disrespectful. She's 18 years old and half owner of this property," Vincent interrupted. "And you left her to die in a blizzard. There's no explaining that away, Mrs. Bennett." Heavy footsteps on the stairs announced Sophia's arrival. She had dressed in a simple blue gown and wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, though she still looked pale and unsteady. "Miss Bennett," Sheriff Miller greeted her. "Good to see you on your feet. Your stepmother here has some serious charges to answer for." "I understand, Sheriff," Sophia said, her voice soft but firm. "But I'd like to propose an alternative, if I may." All eyes turned to her in surprise. "Agnes has hated this ranch from the beginning," Sophia continued. "She only stayed because my father was wealthy by local standards. I'm willing to buy out her share now, rather than waiting until I'm 21, on the condition that she leaves Cripple Creek and never returns." Agnes's eyes narrowed with calculation. "How would you pay? You don't have that kind of money." "I do," Vincent said suddenly, surprising even himself. "I'd be willing to loan Miss Bennett the funds she needs." Sheriff Miller scratched his chin thoughtfully. "It's irregular, but if no charges are pressed, Thomas, you'd have to go with your ma." "No," Sophia said firmly. "Thomas stays with me if he wants to. He's my brother now, even if not by blood." Thomas's face lit up with hope. "Really, Sophia, I can stay." "Of course," she assured him with a warm smile. "This is your home too." Agnes looked between them, clearly weighing her options. Finally, she said, "Fine. Give me the money and I'll sign over my share, but I want a fair price." "You'll get exactly what the contract stipulates," Vincent said. "Not a penny more after what you've done." Within hours, a makeshift agreement had been drawn up. Vincent rode into town with Sheriff Miller and Agnes to formalize the paperwork with the town lawyer and ensure Agnes had a seat on the next stage out of Cripple Creek. Thomas accompanied them, ostensibly to say goodbye to his mother, but in reality to make sure she actually left. By late afternoon, Vincent returned to the Bennett Ranch with Thomas, the property now solely in Sophia's name. He found her in the kitchen, attempting to prepare a meal despite still being weak from her ordeal. "Let me help with that," he offered, taking the heavy pot from her hands. "You should be resting." "I've rested enough," she protested, though she didn't resist when he gently steered her to a chair at the table. "Is it done? Is she really gone?" Vincent nodded. "On the afternoon stage to Denver, she didn't look back once." He glanced at Thomas, who was unusually quiet. "You all right, son?" Thomas nodded. "Yes, sir, Ma was. Well, she wasn't always a good mother. I'm glad to stay with Sophia." "And I'm glad to have you," Sophia said warmly. "We're family now, Thomas, the only family either of us has." "Not quite," Vincent said, taking a seat across from them. "You have friends, too. I'd like to be counted among them if you'll allow it." Sophia studied him, a slow smile spreading across her face. "After what you've done for us, Vincent Evans, you're more than a friend. You're our guardian angel." Vincent felt his face flush with uncharacteristic embarrassment. Hardly that. Just a man who couldn't ride past someone in trouble. "Well, this someone is very grateful," Sophia said softly, "and very aware that she now owes you a considerable sum of money." "There's no hurry to repay it," Vincent assured her. "The ranch will turn a profit come spring if it's managed well." "Do you know much about ranching?" Sophia asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. Vincent grinned. "As it happens, I do. Before I took up my current trade, I worked cattle drives from Texas to Kansas." "And what is your current trade, if I may ask? You never said." "I'm a blacksmith primarily, but I also do some carpentry and general repair work, whatever keeps food on the table." Thomas perked up at this information. "Could you teach me to be a blacksmith, Mr. Evans?" I mean, Mr. Bennett was going to before he died." "I'd be happy to show you a thing or two," Vincent agreed. "Every ranch needs someone who can repair tools and shoe horses." Sophia watched their exchange with a thoughtful expression. "You're welcome to stay for dinner, Vincent. It's the least I can offer after everything." "I'd be honored," he replied, "but only if you let me help prepare it. You still need to regain your strength." The simple meal they shared that evening marked the beginning of a new chapter for all three of them. As they sat around the kitchen table, talking and occasionally laughing despite the trauma of the previous night, Vincent found himself increasingly drawn to Sophia's quiet resilience and gentle wisdom. When it came time for him to leave, he found himself reluctant to go. Standing on the porch with Sophia, watching as the last light faded from the snow-covered landscape, Vincent cleared his throat awkwardly. "I'd like to call on you again, if that would be acceptable," he said formally. Sophia looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the soft glow from the lantern hanging by the door. "I'd like that very much," she replied. "Perhaps you could join us for Sunday dinner after church." "I'll be here," he promised. "And I'll check on you tomorrow as well to make sure you're recovering properly." "We'll be fine," she assured him, "but I'd welcome the company all the same." Vincent mounted thunder, tipping his hat to her before riding away. As he followed the moonlit trail toward his own modest cabin, he found himself thinking about Sophia Bennett far more than was proper for such a brief acquaintance. "Steady, Evans," he muttered to himself. "The girl's just been through a terrible ordeal. She needs a friend, not a suitor." But even as he counseled himself to caution, Vincent knew that Sophia Bennett had somehow carved out a place in his heart in the span of a single day. True to his word, Vincent returned the next day to check on Sophia and Thomas. He found them attempting to clear the paths around the ranch, a task made difficult by Sophia's lingering weakness and Thomas's youth. Without a word, Vincent took the shovel from Sophia's hands and set to work, his strong arms making short work of what would have taken them hours. By midday, he had cleared paths to the barn, the well, and the chicken coop. "You shouldn't be working so hard in this cold," he chided Sophia gently as they shared coffee at the kitchen table afterward. "You're still recovering." "The work needs to be done," she replied simply. "The animals need feeding, eggs need collecting, firewood needs chopping. A ranch doesn't run itself, and now there's only Thomas and me." "You could hire help," Vincent suggested. Sophia shook her head. "Not until I pay you back. I won't go further into debt, even to a friend." Vincent admired her pride even as he worried about her overtaxing herself. "Then let me help when I can. I have my own work, of course, but I could spare a few hours most days to help with the heavier chores." "I couldn't ask that of you," Sophia protested. "You didn't ask." "I offered," Vincent pointed out with a smile. "Besides, it would give me a chance to show Thomas some blacksmithing techniques. Your barn has a decent forge setup that's barely been used." Sophia considered his proposal, clearly torn between her need for independence and practical necessity. Finally, she nodded. "Very well, but only until spring. By then, I should be able to hire proper help or manage on my own." Vincent's visits to the Bennett ranch soon became a daily occurrence. He would arrive early in the morning, help with the most demanding chores, then spend an hour or two teaching Thomas the basics of blacksmithing before heading into town for his regular work. As February gave way to March, Sophia regained her strength, and the ranch began to show signs of proper care once again. The cows were healthy, the chicken flock productive, and the barn and outbuildings in good repair thanks to Vincent's skilled hands. But it wasn't just the ranch that was thriving. Vincent found himself increasingly drawn to Sophia's company, their conversations ranging from practical matters of ranch management to deeper discussions of books, faith, and dreams for the future. Sophia, too, looked forward to Vincent's visits with an eagerness that both thrilled and frightened her. Since her father's death, she had learned to be cautious, to trust sparingly. But Vincent's steadfast reliability and unassuming kindness were slowly breaking down the walls she had built around her heart. On a particularly fine Sunday in late March, as they walked back from church together, Vincent finally gave voice to what had been growing between them. "Sophia," he began, suddenly formal as they paused on the road leading to her ranch. Thomas had run ahead, leaving them momentarily alone. "I need to tell you something." She looked up at him, her hazel eyes curious. "What is it, Vincent? You seem troubled." "Not troubled," he corrected. "Just uncertain. These past weeks, coming here each day, spending time with you and Thomas, they've been the happiest I can remember in a long while." Sophia's cheeks colored prettily. "We've enjoyed your company as well. You've been a godsend to us." "It's more than that, for me at least," Vincent continued, pushing through his natural reserve. "I find myself thinking about you when we're apart, looking forward to seeing you again, wondering what you'll say about this or that." He took a deep breath. "What I'm trying to say, rather poorly, is that I care for you, Sophia, as more than a friend or neighbor." Sophia's eyes widened, and for a moment Vincent feared he had spoken too soon, misread the situation entirely. But then a smile spread across her face, radiant as the spring sunshine. "I care for you too, Vincent," she admitted softly. "More than I thought possible after everything that happened with Agnes. You've shown me that there are still good men in this world, men of honor and kindness." Relief washed over Vincent, followed by a joy so intense it nearly took his breath away. "Then, would you permit me to court you properly, with the understanding that there's no obligation because of the loan or the help I've given?" "I'd like that very much," Sophia replied. "But you should know that I come with responsibilities. This ranch, Thomas. My life is here." "I wouldn't want it any other way," Vincent assured her. "I've grown fond of the boy, and as for the ranch, well, a man could do worse than to tie his future to good land with a never-failing spring." Sophia laughed, the sound like music to Vincent's ears. "Are you courting me or my property, Mr. Evans?" "Definitely you, Miss Bennett," he replied with a grin. "The land is just a pleasant bonus." Their courtship unfolded gradually over the following months, observed with approval by the townspeople of Cripple Creek, who had always been fond of Sophia, and quickly came to respect Vincent for his work ethic and integrity. Thomas thrived under the combined care of Sophia and Vincent. The boy showed a natural aptitude for blacksmithing, spending hours at the forge with Vincent, learning to shape metal into useful tools and decorative items. He also grew several inches, his lanky frame filling out with the healthy work of ranch life and regular meals. By summer, the Bennett ranch was flourishing. The cattle were fat and healthy, the vegetable garden abundant, and the repaired outbuildings spoke of careful stewardship. Sophia had even begun to set aside money toward repaying Vincent's loan, though he repeatedly told her there was no hurry. One warm evening in July, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the Colorado mountains in shades of gold and purple, Vincent finally gathered his courage for what he had been planning for weeks. "I've been thinking," he began, his normally steady voice betraying a hint of nervousness. Sophia turned to him with a smile. "A dangerous pastime." "Indeed," he agreed with a chuckle, "but in this case perhaps a necessary one." He shifted to face her more directly. "Sophia, these past months have been the happiest of my life. I wake each morning eager to see you, and I go to sleep each night thinking of your smile." Sophia's expression softened, her eyes shining with emotion. "Vincent, please, let me finish before my courage fails," he said, taking her hands in his. "I came to Cripple Creek 5 years ago with nothing but my tools and thunder. I built a small life for myself, respectable work, a cabin of my own, a few friends. But it wasn't until that blizzard night when I found you that I realized what was missing." Vincent slid from the chair to one knee before her, still holding her hands. "Sophia Bennett, you've brought joy and purpose to my life. I love you with all my heart, and I would be the happiest man in Colorado if you would consent to be my wife." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes, but her smile was radiant. "Yes, Vincent. Yes, I'll marry you." He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a ring not elaborate or expensive, but beautifully crafted. A small diamond was set in a band of silver that he had forged himself, intricate patterns etched into the metal. "I made it," he said somewhat shyly as he slipped it onto her finger. "I hope it's acceptable." "It's perfect," Sophia whispered, admiring how the last rays of sunlight caught in the diamond. "Absolutely perfect." The sound of the screen door creaking open made them both look up. Thomas stood there, grinning widely. "Does this mean you're going to be my brother now, Mr. Evans?" he asked. Vincent laughed. "I suppose it does, though you might want to start calling me Vincent instead of Mr. Evans. And it means we'll be a proper family," Sophia added, holding out her hand to beckon Thomas closer. "The three of us together." Thomas studied the ring on Sophia's finger with the critical eye he had developed from his blacksmithing lessons. "Nice work," he declared finally. "Clean joints, good polish." Vincent feigned offense. "Is that all you have to say about my masterpiece? Nice work." Thomas grinned. "Well, I could have done better, but it's not bad for an old-timer." "Old-timer," Vincent exclaimed, reaching out to ruffle the boy's hair. "I'll show you old-timer." As their laughter echoed across the ranch yard, Sophia felt a sense of completeness she had not experienced since before her father's death. The painful memories of that terrible night in the blizzard had not disappeared, but they had been transformed, becoming the beginning of a new story rather than the end of an old one. The wedding took place in early September, when the aspen trees were just beginning to turn gold against the deep green of the pines. It was a modest affair at the small church in Cripple Creek, attended by nearly everyone in town. Sheriff Miller gave the bride away, and Thomas stood proudly as Vincent's best man, the ring-bearer's pillow held with solemn dignity in his young hands. Sophia wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved for just such an occasion, with wildflowers in her hair instead of a veil. Vincent, unaccustomed to formal attire, looked both handsome and slightly uncomfortable in his new suit, though his discomfort vanished the moment Sophia appeared at the church doors. After the ceremony, the entire town celebrated at the Bennett Ranch, now officially the Evans Ranch. Tables groaned with food brought by well-wishers. A fiddle player provided music for dancing, and children played games in the yard until well after sunset. As the festivities wound down and guests began to depart, Sophia and Vincent stood arm in arm on the porch of what was now their home, watching as lantern-lit wagons made their way down the road toward town. "Happy?" Vincent asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "More than I ever thought possible," Sophia replied, leaning into his solid warmth. "And you?" "I have everything a man could want," he said simply. "A beautiful wife, a fine boy, good land, and honest work. What more could I ask for?" Thomas joined them then, yawning widely. "Can I go to bed now?" "I'm supposed to help Mr. Johnson shoe his horses tomorrow." Vincent nodded. "Go on, son. I'll wake you at first light." As Thomas headed inside, Sophia turned to Vincent with a soft smile. "You're good with him. He adores you." "The feeling is mutual," Vincent admitted. "He's a fine boy with a bright future ahead of him." "Thanks to you," Sophia pointed out. "You've given him skills, confidence." "He had those already," Vincent countered. "I just helped him recognize them." They stood in comfortable silence for a while longer, watching as the stars emerged in the clear mountain sky. Finally, Sophia spoke again, her voice thoughtful. You ever think about that night, the blizzard? Vincent considered the question carefully before answering. Sometimes. I think about how close I came to riding past your ranch, seeking shelter elsewhere. How easily things might have gone differently. I used to believe it was just bad luck that my father died and left me with Agnes, Sophia said softly. But now I wonder if perhaps there wasn't some greater purpose at work. If he hadn't died, if Agnes hadn't locked me out, if you hadn't been caught in the storm, we might never have met. I prefer to think we would have found each other somehow, Vincent said. Some things are just meant to be, Sophia. She smiled up at him, her eyes reflecting the stars above. I believe you're right, husband. The word sent a thrill through Vincent. Husband. He was her husband now, this remarkable woman his wife. It still seemed somewhat miraculous to him. Shall we go inside, wife? He asked, offering his arm with exaggerated formality. Sophia laughed, the sound as joyful and clear as the mountain stream that ran through their property. Indeed we shall, Mr. Evans. As they entered their home together for the first time as husband and wife, Vincent silently thanked whatever twist of fate had led him through that blizzard on that terrible February night. What had begun as a desperate fight for survival had transformed into a love deeper and stronger than either of them had dared to hope for. In the years that followed, the Evans ranch prospered under their combined care. Vincent maintained his blacksmithing business in town, earning a reputation for quality work that brought customers from as far away as Denver. Sophia managed the ranch with skill and determination, gradually expanding their cattle herd and adding sheep to diversify their income. Thomas grew into a fine young man, apprenticing formally with Vincent, and eventually opening his own smithy in the expanding town of Cripple Creek. When gold was discovered in the area in 1890, bringing a rush of new settlers, Thomas's skills were in high demand, and he thrived on the challenges presented by the booming mining industry. The spring after their first anniversary, Sophia gave birth to a son they named William after her father. 2 years later, a daughter joined the family, Elizabeth, called Beth by everyone except her formal-minded brother William. A second son, Joseph, completed their family in 1888. Through it all, the challenges of ranching in the sometimes harsh Colorado climate, the changes brought by the gold rush, the everyday struggles and joys of raising a family, Vincent and Sophia remained steadfastly devoted to each other. The love that had begun on that desperate winter night only deepened with time, weathering every storm life sent their way. On cold winter evenings, they would sometimes tell their children the story of how they met, though the more frightening aspects were softened for young ears. It became a family legend of sorts, a tale of how love could emerge from even the darkest circumstances. And that, Sophia would conclude, is why we always keep our door open to travelers caught in storms, and why your father insists on having the best locks on every door. Because you never know when you might need to break in to save a beautiful woman, William would tease, earning a gentle cuff from his father. Because safety and security are precious things, Vincent would correct him. And because sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as misfortunes. In 1903, on the 20th anniversary of that fateful blizzard, Vincent and Sophia stood once again on the porch of their home, watching as their children and grandchildren played in the yard. The ranch had grown substantially over the years, as had the town of Cripple Creek with its bustling mines and businesses. Did you ever imagine this? Sophia asked, her hand warm in Vincent's. Though lines had appeared at the corners of her eyes and strands of silver threaded through her chestnut hair, she was as beautiful to him as she had been on that first night. Not in my wildest dreams, Vincent admitted. He had weathered well himself, still strong and straight-backed at 46, though his dark hair was now liberally sprinkled with gray. "I was just hoping to survive the storm that night. And instead, you found a half-frozen girl and a lifetime of responsibility," Sophia teased. Vincent pulled her closer, wrapping his arm around her waist. "I found love," he corrected her softly. "Everything else this ranch, our children, all of it has been the reward for that one simple act of human decency." "You broke a lock and broke into a house," Sophia reminded him with a laugh. "Not exactly what most would call decent behavior." "I prefer to think of it as creative problem-solving," Vincent countered with a grin. Their eldest grandson, Thomas's boy Robert, came running up to them then, his face flushed with excitement. "Grandpa, can you show us how to shoe a horse again? Jimmy doesn't believe I know how." "Well, we can't have that, can we?" Vincent replied seriously. "Let's go show Jimmy exactly what an Evans man can do with a hammer and anvil." As Vincent followed his grandson toward the barn where the other children waited, Sophia watched them go with a heart full of gratitude. 20 years ago, she had stood shivering in the snow, certain that death awaited her. Instead, life rich, full, and blessed beyond measure had been her reward. The lock that Agnes had used to seal her fate had instead opened the door to a future brighter than Sophia could have imagined. And the cowboy who had broken that lock had also broken down the walls around her heart, showing her that love, once found, was worth fighting for with every breath. As evening fell and the family gathered for dinner in the large farmhouse that had replaced the original modest structure, Sophia looked around the table at the faces of those she loved, Vincent at the head, their children with their spouses, Thomas and his wife, grandchildren squirming in their seats, and silently thanked God for turning what should have been her end into her beginning. Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Vincent caught Sophia looking thoughtfully at the small wooden box on her dresser, the box that held the lock he had broken that night, preserved as a reminder of how their story began. "Thinking about the past?" he asked, coming to stand behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Thinking about how sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best life," she replied, leaning back against his chest. "If Agnes hadn't locked me out. If I hadn't been foolish enough to ride in a blizzard." Vincent continued, "If you hadn't known how to pick a lock." Sophia added with a smile. Vincent turned her in his arms, looking down into the eyes he had fallen in love with 2 decades earlier. "Then I suppose we should be grateful for all of it, the good and the bad." "Yes," Sophia agreed, rising on tiptoe to kiss him softly. "Every lock, every storm, every moment that brought us here." As they climbed into bed together, secure in the knowledge that their family was safe and their love as strong as ever, Vincent reflected on the strange workings of fate that had brought them together. One desperate night, one broken lock, one act of human kindness, and from these small beginnings a lifetime of love had grown. Outside, a light snow began to fall, but within the walls of the Evans home, all was warmth and safety. The blizzard that had nearly taken Sophia's life had instead given her everything she had ever wanted, and more than she had ever dared to dream.